Nianza na yangu nimekataa kwa.
Hivi inanisumbua.
Weka sauti.
Yes, mute your mic and that's what we told you. Again, mute your mic and mute your camera. If you don't mute your mic, you don't mute your camera, I'm going to remove you from the class.
Unajia
So good afternoon, students. Last week, we had an opportunity to share on what communication skills as a course entails. And I remember saying that this is one course that will serve you well while you are learning, and also after in the job market, at the places where you will have any kind of interaction and communication. These skills that you learn here will help you. I am sure, and we keep praying that some of you will get married and marry. That means even at that point, you will be able to have aspects of communication. And what you learn here will be of great assistance to you. So take this course not just as a part of what you'll be examined about, but look at it as a practical, what we call life skill, so that once you are able to communicate effectively with your colleagues, you're able to communicate effectively with your lecturers, you're able to communicate effectively with your parents and other people that are around you, and later on at your workplace, if you're able to communicate even with your spouse and your children, then this course will have served you well. And that is what I intend to do. And so today I want us to move on to the types of communication. And communication is categorized in 3 ways. One is by the number of people involved in the communication process. If you are communicating with yourself, and I'm sure you know there are times when you have communicated with yourself, you have called yourself to a meeting. That is how we talk about it colloquially and casually. We say, I have called myself to a meeting. That means you're asking the questions, you're answering the questions, you are informing yourself, you are making decisions, but you are basically alone. Then that is called intrapersonal communication. And it happens within your mind and within yourself. Usually, it may not be evident to anyone, but sometimes the decisions that come out of it, the feedback, the kind of response that you make after the intrapersonal communication will help anybody who is looking at you or anybody who is living with you know that you had a conversation with yourself and you arrived at certain conclusions which you are now actualizing in the form of actions. The second type that involves a number of people is the interpersonal. And this is communication with others. If you're communicating with, let us say, a roommate, you're communicating with your parent or parents, communicating with a sibling, where the numbers are not big. We call that interpersonal communication. And now interpersonal communication will usually be evident. There will be evidence, perhaps a voice message, perhaps a written message. There could be nonverbal communication involved in the interpersonal aspect of communication. And so there is evidence. And usually perhaps you'll expect some feedback. There could be challenges with this kind of communication as you're sharing information with other people. One of them is time management. There's a possibility that you'll take a lot of time trying to communicate with a peer or with a friend. If you are doing intrapersonal communication, sometimes people take a long time, but usually it is minimal. You will take a very short while communicating with yourself, telling yourself certain things, which then you will go ahead and do or undo. But in interpersonal communication, because you're sharing with someone else, time will also has to be considered. And sometimes even miscommunication may happen because sometimes depending on how you are sharing this information with this other person or with these other 2 or 3 people, then there is a possibility that there could be miscommunication. Then the third type is a small group where we are talking about 3 to 10 people. The kind that you will do when you will be involved in group discussions, we're calling that small group communication. Now, because you're a small group again, the information has to be understood by all the people in that group. And sometimes there may be miscommunication. Sometimes there may be barriers and noise around that may cause this communication not to happen or to happen. Small group communication is something that we are engaged in many times, and you will engage in it as a student, especially in Kibabi University, where we support and encourage you to work in groups. Then the last type is what we call mass communication. This is where, let us say, one person is communicating with a large group of people, or a large group of people is receiving some kind of communication. It could be perhaps in the form of a radio presentation. It could be in the form of a TV presentation. It could be a written newspaper, something that communicates to a large group of people. We call that mass communication. Again, when we are talking about mass communication, there will be challenges with it, because again, the issues of noise, the issues of misunderstanding, the issues of lack of feedback may arise, or minimal feedback may arise. I want you to think of all these categories that involve numbers of people and try to see what would be the challenges that can arise when one is involved in intrapersonal communication, when one is involved in interpersonal, small group, or mass communication. So that is the first type, or the first category. The second category involves the medium or the channel of communication. The channel can be verbal or oral. This refers to what information you can share by word of mouth. So the person sharing information, the person we called the source or the sender, uses verbal means to be able to share information. There is a possibility that even the receiver will also respond orally or verbally. Again, there are challenges, the advantages and challenges to oral or verbal communication. And I'm sure you know some of them. Perhaps I could mention one, is that there's a possibility that the information may not arrive as intended to the receiver. And therefore the receiver may not respond appropriately. The next channel that I want us to know about is the written communication. And this one involves the use of symbols, written symbols. It could be in the form of letters, the short messages that you write, the SMS that you write on your phone. It could be electronic media or electronic information. It could be in the form of a book. But the aspect here that should be considered is that it is done using written symbols. Written communication is among the oldest forms of communication, together with verbal communication. Scholars have established that as far back as when people didn't know how to write clearly, they would still communicate. And they did this using number 3, which is graphic communication. They used visual representations. They drew pictures. They even drew the instruments they used in hunting. They drew the animals that they hunted. So scholars have been able to establish some of the things that went on a long time ago, although the people were not writing using written symbols, but they were using graphic communication. And graphic communication goes on to the levels of pictures. It goes on to the levels of visual art. It goes on to the levels of PowerPoint presentations, if it is in our days. It goes on to various things which you can look at and then realize that some communication is being shared, some information is being passed to you. The fourth type of channel is the non-verbal communication. And this includes non-linguistic messages. When we talk about non-linguistic, we mean that no words are spoken, but still a message is shared using body movements, body parts, For example, visual expressions, gestures, body movements, even the pose. For example, if you came to my office and you had your hands in your pocket, there is a message that you will be sharing with me. Perhaps you're telling me that you are my boss, or you're telling me that I'm supposed to be junior to you. That's why your hands are in your pocket. And of course, I'll respond accordingly. We have what we call the facial expressions. If you receive a good message, let us say someone is saying to you that they are happy, or you look at a person and their face is dropping. What they're saying is that they are sad. There are some issues or things that have made them unhappy, so they are sad. If they do not like, they have contempt for your appearance or contempt regarding something that you have done, then again, the way they twist their mouth, the way they screw up their lips, the way they will twist up their nose or their eyes will show you that they are either happy or unhappy. So we have nonverbal communication, and nonverbal communication is one of the communication channels which scholars have established to be very, very informative. There are times when we speak with our mouth, what is different from what we're expressing with our body. You can go and hug someone and say, as a sign of saying, I congratulate you. But the way you are hugging them, let us say the strength you're using to hug them, or even the eyes that you're showing to the other people who are not the person you're hugging, will show the kind of feeling you have within you. So because nonverbal communication is majorly directed by our feelings, it has a great message, and therefore we should be able to check our nonverbal communication when we're involved in any aspect of communication. Now, I'm saying these channels have advantages and they have challenges. All these channels. I have given you some of these advantages and challenges on the e-learning platform. Once you're logged in there, you will be able to see some of the challenges and advantages. And some of them you can think up for yourself, some of the challenges that you expect in these types of communication. Then the third type of categorization of communication is by directional flow. When we talk about directional flow, we mean where is this information targeted? For example, we have upward communication. This is communication which you make, for example, from you to your boss. You're making communication from you to your parents, or you're giving communication from you to your lecturer. Perhaps you want to inquire about a lesson. You want to inquire about something that you are interested in, and the person you're talking to is of a higher rank. Now that one is called upward communication. And then we have what we call lateral communication. This occurs when people are talking and these people are on the same rank. For example, when you're talking to your peer, your colleague, your roommate, your classmate, your coursemate, that is lateral communication. And of course, it has its own different characteristics as compared to the upward communication. In the upward communication, we will ensure that we have some sense of respect regarding how we are addressing this senior person. In lateral communication, we may show some level of respect, but there is some kind of communication that will show that we are the same age, that we, as much as we respect each other, but we have some jocular things that we'll bring in, we'll communicate at a level of our own understanding. And sometimes we may even use our own kind of language. Like when you use Sheng with your colleague, you have no worries. But if you were to use Sheng with, let us say, the Vice Chancellor of Kibabi University, I am sure he will tell you to stop, go organize yourself, and then come back and express yourself in a manner that they can understand. Because the possibility is there that the Vice Chancellor may not understand what you're communicating in Sheng. But if you did the same with your colleague, this is something that would work out very well. Then we have what we call downward communication. This is communicating with people who are below you in rank. For example, if you are the boss and you are communicating with the workers that you are in charge of, then you are doing downward communication. And downward communication, again, has its own characteristics. The kind of information you'll share with them and the tone that you will adopt will be the kind of tone that shows there is the boss and there are the people who are under the leadership of the boss. So, and even the kind of the non-verbal communication you'll use will also be able to tell that you are communicating with people who are below you in terms of rank. Then we have what we call external communication. This is communicating with people outside the organization. This could be our clients. They could be people who supply us with things. They could be people who are in charge of supporting us or supporting the organization. And so again, there is some kind of respect. There is some kind of channel that you will use. There is some kind of encoding of your information. You will not just put your information in any way. You will organize your information in a way that should please the external people. Then we have what we call cross-cultural communication. And this is communication that happens between people of different cultures. Different cultures communicate differently. There are those people who, when they are talking to you, they will want you to look them in the eye. There are those who, when you look them in the eye, they will interpret that as rudeness, as lack of respect. So different cultures communicate differently. Some cultures use a lot of words. Other cultures use a lot of non-verbal cues. They use a lot of facial expressions. They will use a lot of gestures. They will gesticulate a lot. There are some people in their culture, they will want you to communicate in a way that you show respect for the elderly. For example, if you are eating on a table, that food should pass from the elder to the younger. So understanding, again, cross-cultural communication and engaging in cross-cultural communication is something that you may find yourself participating in. And it is a good area to understand because we are also training you to be people of the world. We do not just expect you to end up in Kenya, in Bungoma, perhaps in Kibabi. We expect you to be a citizen of the world. And when you go out there, what you'll be doing will be cross-cultural communication. Then finally, we have grapevine communication. This is informal communication that happens within an organization. What we call in Kiswahili mushene, passing information from one person to another in an informal manner. Some of the information may even be just rumors, hearsay, information that has no backing. There is no support to the information that is being shared, but it is communication anyways. It is a form of communication and it happens in an organization and it happens among groups of people. Sometimes you and your colleagues will find yourself sharing information perhaps about another colleague or about even the university or about your lecturers in the form of grapevine communication. Now, I'm saying that the direction of your communication flow at any time will influence what and how you communicate, the words you use, and the method you choose to communicate. So as we think about these types in the form of the directional flow, it's important to know that each one of these will influence the words you will use. It will influence the method you will use to communicate. It will influence even the kind of things that you will say to the person you intend to communicate with. Now, in the study of communication, just like I mentioned in our first lesson, communication has been an area of interest to many scholars for many years. And so as they went about trying to understand how communication happened or happens, some have tried to come up with diagrammatic representations of how the communication process goes on. So they give us a visual idea of how information flows from one person to another, what is involved in between, and therefore help us to understand anytime we engaged in communication that there is a process that is happening. And traditionally, we have three major models. We have the linear model, we have the interactive model, and we have the transactional model. Each one of these differs slightly in perspective from the other. Initially, people began by looking at the linear model, or the linear model was the earliest aspect of trying to understand how communication happens. And when you look at the linear model, you will see we have the sender and we have the receiver. So according to the scholars who came up with this model, they envisaged the communication process as happening with the sender coming up with a message and sharing this message with the receiver. You notice that the receiver does not seem to respond. You also notice that the arrow seems to be pointing in one single direction. Information seems to come from the sender directly to the receiver. And I think the sender will again give a message to the receiver. So there is minimal interaction between these two. There is no engagement with the information between these two. And because of this kind of model, other scholars came and disputed and said communication does not happen exactly like this. And so they came up with what we call the interactive model of communication. Again, in this model, you will see someone called the sender, who also is a receiver. Then we have the receiver, who also is a sender. And then we have the message coming from the sender to the receiver, and the message coming from the receiver to the sender. There is a channel through which this is done. It could be in the form of a telephone call, it could be in the form of oral communication, it could be in the form of non-verbal cues, but there is some kind of interaction. These two people are sharing information. The sender says something, the receiver receives it and codes it and sends it back. And usually these two people will be operating in fields of experience. That means they have some background information which they are using to create, to encode their message and even to decode the message. Around them, I'm sure you can see there is some kind of noise. This noise may not be actual physical noise. It could even be aspects of things that are happening in the minds of these two as they communicate. It could also be about the context where they are communicating from. It could also be an aspect of the channel or even the message. There is something that now results in some noise. That means something that affects the way the message is received by the sender or by the receiver. So when we talk about interaction, we are talking about this constant engagement. There is movement of information. There is a way in which ideas, messages, and information are shared between these two. And these two take turns to be either the sender or the receiver. So none of them is stationed, or none of them is simply a sender, or none of them is simply the receiver. There is some kind of exchange. Then we have the third model, which was a further improvement on the interactive model. This is the transactional model. And the transactional model has affected a lot what we get to understand regarding communication. You will still see that we have the sender who is also at another time a receiver. We have the receiver who can also become a sender. And we have the message, and the arrow is two-sided, meaning that communication can go either way. Communication can go either way. We have the channel through which the communication is happening. Then we have feedback from the sender, feedback from the receiver. And this looks like a cyclic way of communication. Information is being shared in a cyclic manner. There is constant engagement with information. So in the process, these two are building a shared understanding. Remember our definition of communication. We said communication is the process of building a shared understanding or arriving at shared understanding. So because these two are continually talking to each other, they are building a shared understanding. There is consistent communication. So this is the transactional model, and is a model that has been used very much in terms of explaining how communication happens. And as you explore this, you can also see there is noise. There are things that are happening around. That means communication does not happen in a vacuum. It happens in a place where other things are also happening. It could also be happening in the mind of the receiver, and the receiver has issues which they are going through, or the sender has issues which they are undergoing. So all that is part of what is around the communication process. Now, we do not want to imagine that communication always happens, because it does not usually always happen. They are what we call barriers to effective communication. And a barrier, as you look at my notes, you'll see that a barrier is anything that interferes with the communication process. And these are a number. There are very many. And the reason why we want to learn about these barriers, or want to create an understanding of these barriers, is because we want also to be able to create mitigating activities, so that we do not just sit there and say, because of the weather, I was not able to communicate. Because of sickness, I was not able to communicate. When we are aware of what can interfere with communication, then we are better able to address it. And also when we are aware of what can be a potential barrier, then we can create ways of mitigating it. So one of the first barriers to effective communication is the language barrier. Every form of communication happens in a language. It could be the language of nonverbal cues. It could be the language, the official language of a place. It could be a mother tongue, but it is that communication must happen in a language. And therefore, one of the key barriers to communication will be the language barrier. Sometimes it could be that the two people involved in the communication process do not share a common language. And because they do not share a common language, there is a possibility that one is saying things that the other does not understand. The one person is sharing information which the other does not understand. And because of that, none of them understands what is being, they do not arrive at a common shared understanding. And therefore miscommunication happens. And this language barrier is not just situated in the oral or in the verbal communication. It also happens in the written communication. It also happens in the non-verbal cues. For example, there are certain non-verbal cues which you can use, which you can produce by use of your hands. Some of them may actually be interpreted, like the thumbs up sign can be interpreted to mean you are congratulating the other person. You are creating an inspiration. You're telling them, go on, you are doing well. The same sign, when you turn the thumb downwards, it has a different vulgar meaning. When you turn the thumb to the left or to the right, you are communicating different things. So language barrier is not just about verbal communication. It can also be about non-verbal communication. And when it comes to the written communication, the language barrier can occur, especially when the language that is used is strange or alien to the other person who is reading. I've seen some of you on campus. You have very nice t-shirts which you have bought in Mutumba, and you are walking around with them. They are written in some foreign language. You may not know what they're saying. Perhaps the shirt or the sweatshirt or the hoodie is saying, you are a fool. But because it's written in a language you do not understand, you go on and wear it very happily. There are some which are very vulgar information, but some of you also still go ahead and wear them. What you're doing is you're communicating to the people who are reading the vulgarity on your t-shirt, that you are a kind of person who has no good values and morals. So language barrier can occur in very, very many ways. It can be in the form of lack of good vocabulary, especially when you are speaking to people, and let us say your vocabulary is not very good, or sometimes you may choose to use very difficult technical terms. I'm sure among my students today, I have members of the Luo community. Hello, members of the Luo community. I know Luos love the English language and they love using big words. So sometimes you can also use big words, big vocabulary, big terms, terminologies, and these terminologies may cause your listeners to get lost. And so what will happen is that they will not get the information you intended to get to them. It can be in the form of spelling errors. You are writing and your work has spelling errors. Spelling has the potential of creating meaning that is not what you intended. By just altering a single word, a single letter from a word, you create a totally different meaning, and therefore what you communicate is totally different from what you intended. Similarly to punctuation. By placing punctuation in certain places, the meaning that arises for the reader can be different from what you intended. So when we're talking about language barrier, we're saying that these particular aspects and others which I've not mentioned, which are part of my notes, are things that can cause the reader, who is then the receiver, to have some kind of lack in understanding what you're talking about. Even poor communicative competence. There are people who are not able to communicate well. When they begin, perhaps they are not able to organize their ideas to flow in a certain logical order, or they are not able to use the language well. If it is English, they are not able to use it well. So what happens is that they end up not being able to deliver the information they wish to deliver to their receiver. The second barrier is physical barrier. And physical barriers are a number. When you talk about physical barriers, we are not talking about something that is, let us say, like a room or a stone thing. What we mean is aspects like noise. Noise can be a barrier. If you are in a lecture room, for example, and you're sitting with other people and they are doing a lot of chatting, they're joking, they're laughing, they're slapping each other, you are likely to miss out on the information which you intended to gain. So this kind of noise, it could be around you or it could be outside. Let us say you are in a place where there is motorbikes passing, hooting, vehicles, all that kind of thing. It could be an aspect of the weather. The weather can create a physical barrier. If it is very hot, for example, and you are sitting in a small room, there is a possibility that you'll be struggling to get some relief from the heat. Perhaps you're trying to fan yourself. Perhaps you're trying to move closer to where there is a window, or you're trying to remove some of the clothes so that you can be in a situation where you have comfort to be able to listen. It could be a situation where it is rainy, and so the rain is causing some sounds that are beating on the roof and therefore interfering with what you're listening to. It could be very cold. All those aspects of weather can interfere with how you then focus on the communication you're receiving. It could be an aspect of distance from the speaker. Let us say you are in auditorium C, and the speaker is speaking from the platform, and you are in the balcony of auditorium C, and the speaker has a very low mic, or the mic that they're using is not producing enough sound, or they are using their natural voice. There is a possibility that from the balcony, you will not be able to get any information that is being shared. There's a possibility that the people who will benefit will be the people who are close to the speaker. So even distance from the speaker can be a physical barrier. Then we have what we call physiological barriers. These are in terms of defects on the human body. There are people who are blind, or they have partiality in terms of blindness. They are partially blind. That means they can see, but not very clearly. We have those that have hearing challenges. Those aspects can cause them to have problems being able to either see what is being communicated non-verbally or hear what is being communicated verbally. And sometimes even what is written, they may have challenges unless they are aided by, let us say, braille machine or other means of communication that can help them therefore be able to understand the information that is being shared. Physiological challenges can cause, they can actually become barriers to communication. Then we have cultural barriers. Our cultural beliefs and values define us. Each one of us comes from a culture. We will also even work, we will school in different cultures. I'm sure there are people in Kibabi who come from a different culture from the Bukusu culture. Sometimes our cultural values and beliefs act as barriers. What we believe in our mind to be right, or what we believe in our mind to be fair, may affect how we receive and respond to communication. Let me give you an example. There are some opportunities, or let me give you a scenario. A young person is coming to share with the community about this, the use of mosquito nets to keep away malaria. Now, this young man is coming to share with a group of elderly people, even people of the age of his parents. And this young man has an afro on his head, or this young man has dreadlocks on his head. On one ear, this young man has a stud. On all his fingers, he has some rings. This young man is smartly dressed. He has carried the appropriate material. He is coming to share with these people. But because of the way he appears, there is a possibility that his message will not be received. The people there may not appreciate the idea of dreads, the idea of a stud, the idea of the rings on the fingers. And so all the good information that this young person has carried may actually be lost because of the values and the beliefs of the people that he is coming to share information with. Let us look at another example, the example of communities where women are regarded as children. And here comes a woman who is coming to share with the people about, let us say, progressive agricultural practices. This lady, even if she's well dressed in a suit, well covered, But because this community believes that women are children and children have nothing to share, there's a possibility that the ideas of this young lady will not be well received. And the situation could be made worse if the lady is dressed in, let us say, a tumbo cut, dressed in let us say, a very sagging blouse. There is a possibility that even more, the people, the congregation, the audience will not listen to the message because they will be focused on why should this person come to share with us information when they are not respecting our values and beliefs. So cultural values, they can cause barriers to communication. Then we have psychological barriers. This has something to do with the state of mind of either the receiver or the sender of the information. Either of them can be undergoing, let us say, a sickness. They are unwell, they have a headache, or they're just not feeling well. They may be undergoing, let us say, a stressful situation. They have suffered some stress. They are not feeling well about certain things. Their emotions are down, or they are overexcited in terms of their emotions. This can actually affect the way information will be shared and received. A person who is unwell, for example, and you're trying to share with them some exciting news, they will not respond as expected, because according to them, the first priority is for them to be treated, to get well, to be in an optimum state of their body before they are then able to receive your good news. Then we have what we call personality. And personality takes very many different forms, and it can be a barrier. There are people who lack interest in many things. Even when you come to share with them an exciting piece of information, they are just there. When you come to share with them sad information, they are just there. They lack interest. There are those who lack confidence. They have not built their confidence level. And because of that, when they go to communicate with anybody, even if it is just interpersonal or in small group communication, they will find challenges. Usually, they may not bring out the point, or they may end up with anxiety. They may be shaking. They may even forget some of the information. We have some people who have the habit of stereotyping. They just look at people and they make up their minds that either these people are not good or these people will not receive my information. And of course, that stereotyping will affect the way they communicate. We have those who like jumping to conclusions. You begin to share some information with someone, they have already finished and dismissed you. Some of them even finish your sentence. You begin a sentence and they finish the sentence for you. That is an aspect of, that can be a barrier to communication, because this person wants to share, to be heard up to the end, but you have already concluded and you have already even given your own view, you've already given your own side of the idea. It becomes a barrier. There are also those times when we hold differing opinions with other people. Perhaps the receiver has a differing opinion with the sender, and therefore there is some kind of conflict in between as the information is being shared. And that, of course, will affect the way the information will be received. I want you to know, students, that these barriers are not just there for our knowing, but they are there so that we can think of ways of mitigating them. For example, when you get married and your husband is sharing with you information, and you jump to conclusions, then there is a possibility that in that marriage, there will be some kind of conflict of interest and conflict in terms of how you understand one another. Let us say you want to share information with your seniors, and the way you're presenting yourself seems to communicate that you have no respect. There's a possibility that your information will not be heard. So we need to think of what can we do? What can we do You have been sent to share information. Let us say you are a social worker or a criminologist. You have gone to a community, you want to share with them information that is likely to help them. And you realize that this community has some kind of respect which they give to certain kind of appearances or certain kinds of things. Then you need to understand that you must prepare yourself. If it is in terms of dressing, even that stud, you can remove it. You can cover your head. You can cover your dreads. You can dress appropriately so that your information is received, because that is the intention you have. Your intention is to share information and be heard and to arrive at a common understanding. Today, students, I want us also to look at what we call institutional communication. Kibabi University is an institution. You will realize, and I'm sure you have realized this far, that we do not have bells, that a lot of our communication just happens. There are certain channels that we use to share communication. You may realize that you have an issue and you want to take your information to the next level, to the next officer for assistance. There are ways in which you can do this. That is what we are calling institutional communication. In my notes, I've given you details of these 5 ways in which we communicate as an institution. Some of them you have learned in your secondary school English, and I'm sure that you have an idea of them. The first one is the internal memo. The internal memo is a document that is used to communicate in a large organization. Because they may not call everybody to a parade, or they may not call people to a certain gathering, usually an internal memo will be used. When you check the format of the internal memo, you will see certain aspects of it. We have the reference, we have from whom the internal memo is from, you will see the source of the internal memo, the recipients that are targeted by the memo, and then the subject that is being addressed by the memo. Should you want to respond to the internal memo, then we have what we call the reference. When you check the face of the internal memo, you'll see a reference. Then you can quote that when you are responding to that internal memo. I want to encourage you students, as I've always done to your colleagues who have gone before you, is that Kibabi University will communicate to you using the internal memo. We have a number of notice boards in the institution, placed in certain strategic places at the entrance of the academia, at the entrance of the administration block, at the entrance of the multi-purpose hall, sometimes at the entrance of your halls. Even at the gate, we have places where memos are placed. You will see a memo indicated new. When you see a memo indicated new, then it means that it has current information which you need to read and be aware of. Things happen in the university. There are times there could be some important person coming to share information, to give a public talk. It will be shared to you using an internal memo. So if you're interested, then it means that you need to pass near the notice boards and ensure that you understand what is taking place inside your university. There have been times when there are commotions, interactions between students and the police. Before this happens, there will be an internal memo informing you either to vacate your halls of residence and be very far away from the institutional compound. If you do not know, if you know you never pass near the notice board, there's a possibility that you will come in and be confronted by these people who are called the police. So it is important that you make a habit of always passing near the notice board. Perhaps they are saying that the government has already responded to your application for HELB loan. If you you are not keen, then you will not know that this has happened. So it is important that you take time to always look and pass near the notice board. And also, I want to encourage you not to develop the habit of tearing down memos, because if they are meant to communicate to all of us, then we should all be able to see. Let the person who put the memo there be also the one to remove. But we should develop a culture of reading and allowing others also to read. Because when we do that, all of us will be on the same ground. We will have a shared understanding of what is happening in our institution. The second aspect of institutional communication is the use of the email. I know you have already developed your email address, which you'll use to communicate while in the institution. You can even communicate outside the institution using this email address. Of course, it will be functional until you cease to be a student of Kibabi University. But meanwhile, this is one area or one use, aspect that you can use to share your communication, either with your lecturers, with your colleagues, and also with outside clients of the institution, your email. I want you to look at what I have written in my notes regarding the email. Then we have the letter of inquiry. As you live in the Kibabi community, there will be opportunities where things may be done and you wish to inquire, you wish to ask a question. You do a letter of inquiry. Now, in my notes, I've given you the format and the contents of a letter of inquiry. It is usually a brief letter. It has a specific person it is addressed to, and it also seeks to inquire about something very specific. It provides a way in which the person will then correspond to you to tell you either they have solved your issue or they have shared with you how you are going to go about resolving the issue that you have. And believe you me, there will be opportunities when you need to write a letter of inquiry. Perhaps you notice that your fee balance is not reading the same as your receipts. You may want to write to the finance and ask, student finance, and ask, inquire what happened or why the disparity between your fee and what you have in terms of your receipts or your bank slips. You may have an issue, want to inquire from, let us say, an officer in Kibabi University. You will write a letter of inquiry. The fourth one is the letter of job application together with the curriculum vitae. The letter of job application is a letter that you need to begin to write. Begin to accustom yourself to developing letters of application. I know you have done this in your secondary school, English, but I want you to now be able, when you look at my task, I've asked you to write a letter applying for an opportunity to work as a clerk in the main dining hall in Kibabi University. You accustom yourself. Many times, employers have complained that they receive letters of job application that do not agree with the certificate of the person applying for the job, because the letter seems to have so many errors, either of format, of content, and even just the appearance and what they target. Yet, the person is presenting, let us say, a second-class upper division, a first-class honors of their degree, yet they cannot write a job application letter. So in various subjects, you will be taught this, but I want you to begin today, this evening, take time and write this letter and file it. I will not collect it, but it will form part of what you're building for yourself as a portfolio. You're building a portfolio of what you have. When you look at that letter in 4 years' time, you should be able to see what else you can do or what else you can improve on that letter and what else you can do to ensure that you become a good applier of jobs or able to apply for jobs. Then there's the curriculum vitae. Again, I've given you the format in my notes, and I know you were taught how to write a curriculum vitae. I want you to note that you can develop, and I want you to do that this evening, what we call a bucket CV. A bucket CV is a CV which you simply put together. You go to the format, and then you write, you put it together, and try to see what is it that you have been able to achieve in terms of your academics. What is it that you have been able to achieve in terms of your work experience? What is it that you have been able to achieve in terms of even your other skills? So that when you have written down this bucket CV, you will work towards improving it. I usually encourage my students and say that when you develop this CV, this bucket CV, it will be a very small document, but continually improve it. When you have a holiday, engage yourself, either do computers, go and undertake a computer study, do the computer packages, come and include, after you have received the certificate, come and include that on your CV. If you have an opportunity and you can be sponsored to do driving, go and do driving, get the license and add that as part of the skills that you have. If you get an opportunity to work somewhere, let us say on a voluntary basis, you have been given to work somewhere on a voluntary basis, make sure that after you have done your work, let us say you have been given the opportunity to work for, let us say, a month. After you have finished working, ask them to write you a letter of recommendation, because this will form part of what you will say that I worked in this organization between January and February of 2023, and these were the things I was doing, or this was the position I held. And even those people that you have worked with, or you have worked for, that organization you have worked for, they will form your referees. Because when you finish your studies in Kibabi University, you will need to have people who know you. Referees are people who can attest to your work ethics. They are people who can attest to your ability to focus, your ability to share information, your ability to work in a team. They know your work ethics. So if you do not have anywhere where you have worked, because sometimes students tell me, Madam, how do we write a CV when we have never worked anywhere? I want to tell you that as you're sitting there feeling that you have nowhere to work, there are people who are working and building their CV, your same age mates, people of your age. And when you will go for interview at the end of your 4 years, and you're presenting your very thin file, they will be presenting a file that is loaded with what they have been able to do, the academic qualifications they have been able to achieve, the work experiences they have been able to achieve, the people they have known, the skills they have developed. So it is important, my student, for you to know this afternoon, that you don't have to work somewhere and be paid. It is not about money, because money you will eat, you will use, and you will finish. But when someone writes for you a letter of recommendation, that letter speaks for you. It can open doors for you. It also means that you will have an experience of working in a team with other people. It also means that you are now a person who can work and agree with other people and share information and be useful to society. So do not always think that if I have to work, then I have to be paid. That one, we have already passed that level. We are now at the level of kujituma. I am sure you have heard of that phrase, kujituma. You go and work. Your intention is to get experience. Your intention is to be able to now, at the end of it, get a letter of recommendation. Your intention is to build your CV. Then we have the minutes of meetings. You have joined Kibabi University. You're going to be a member of certain organizations. Some of them are clubs, some of them are committees, some of them are groupings of some sort. When you get there, there will be opportunities for meetings to have minutes. And it is important for you, if you're selected or called upon to write the minutes of the meeting, you should be able to do that well. So revisit your notes from secondary school. Also look at my notes under institutional communication. I've given you the format of the minutes, minute writing. I've given you the contents so that you can be able to know even the kind of language, the kind of tense you are to use. Are you to use the passive voice or the active voice when writing your minutes? All this will help you become a better person in terms of institutional communication. So students, this afternoon, I want to leave you with a task. It will not be marked, but it will be useful as you go along. Create a file, not on your phone, a physical file. In that file, write a letter applying for an opportunity to work as a clerk in the main dining hall in Kibabi University. Write it and put it in your file. Then write out your CV as it is now. Do not mind that it could be 1 page, it could be half a page. Using the layout that I've given you in my notes, write out your CV. And I want you to continually be looking at it and developing it. Once you acquire something, add it there. If you go online and you undertake a certain course, because we have a lot of online courses, which you as a student can improve yourself, you can improve your skills, then add the certificate as part of what you have learned. Write the skills that you already have acquired. Continue building on it. By the end of your 4 years, you should have a CV that you can take somewhere and it can earn you an opportunity. Students, I want to stop at this point. I want to say that next week, we'll be looking at listening skills. We want to look at how we can effectively improve our listening. Listening to our lecturers, listening to each other, and how we can then be able to achieve much in terms of our academics. So with that, I wish to stop there. I want to stop there. I can see a lot of hands. I want to imagine that those are hands of people who are saying that they are part of this meeting. I can see people telling me they have enjoyed. I want to encourage you that go to the online platform. Do not just enjoy my voice. When I'll bring exams, I'll not just bring about my voice. I will bring things that you have learned and internalized. And I want you to begin to make use of this information. When we talk about any skill, begin to use it. Like we're talking about intrapersonal, we're talking about interpersonal, we're talking about upward, downward, lateral communication. Make use of this information for yourself. Otherwise, have a good day. Make sure that you're able to log in to the e-learning platform and begin to look at those notes, to beef up your notes, and it will be well with you. Have a good day.